Kindly take down notes, you cannot remember everything. And click the subtitles so you can both hear and read.
HTML alone cannot produce the same functionality and interactivity that modern websites have today, and that it can be facilitated by using another web programming language, CSS. How does HTML fare in modern web programming? HTML-only websites are excessive in bandwidth. Tables, nested tables, and spacer GIFs control layout. Extended tags control textual formatting in each and every table cell. Coding each section of a web page is too time-consuming. Bloated page size translates to more bandwidth cost. At the end of the session, the students should be able to create and design a website using CSS. CSS was first proposed by Hakan William Lai on October 10, 1994. At the time, Lai was working with Tim Berners-Lee at CERN. Several other style sheet languages for the web were proposed around the same time, and discussions on public mailing lists, and inside World Wide Web Consortium resulted in the first W3C CSS recommendation, CSS1, being released in 1996. In particular, a proposal by Bert Boss was influential. He became co-author of CSS1, and is regarded as co-creator of CSS. What is CSS? CSS is acronym for Cascading Style Sheets. It is a simple mechanism for adding style, e.g. fonts, colors, spacing, to web documents, and it describes how HTML elements are to be displayed on screen, paper, or in other media. It allows web programmers to easily manage a site's overall style by placing that code in a separate document. Style sheets have been used in one form or another since the 1980s, but the initial version of CSS was proposed shortly after the creation of the W3C and implemented in 1996. However, it was not widely supported until around 2000 with the release of Internet Explorer 5. The notable characteristics of CSS are: it alleviates a widely felt weakness of prior web technology by separating presentation from structure, HTML controlled, and behavior, CSS controlled, as well as it is backwards compatible and orthogonal to other features. CSS allows web developers to modify existing selectors or create new ones. The font, text size, text color, or any number of other properties for every page that uses a selector, can be modified at once by modifying the selector itself in the CSS. Instead of tagging every page that already exists as well as adding the tag every time you make a new page, just go into the CSS and add this code. Body. Font size, 13px. There are three types of CSS. Number 1 inline CSS, number 2 internal or embedded CSS, and number 3 external CSS. Inline CSS contains the CSS property in the body section attached with element is known as inline CSS. This kind of style is specified within an HTML tag using the style attribute. Internal or embedded CSS can be used when a single HTML document must be styled uniquely. The CSS rule set should be within the HTML file in the head section i.e. the CSS is embedded within the HTML file. External CSS contains separate CSS file which contains only style property with the help of tag attributes. CSS property written in a separate file with .css extension and should be linked to the HTML document using link tag. This means that for each element, style can be set only once and that will be applied across web pages. Characteristics of CSS. Higher level of fine-grained control. Consistency of look and feel to any number of pages. Layout control down to the pixel. Control over font rendering. Simple effects creation that don't require programming. Declarable web page attributes in CSS. Character formatting. Paragraph formatting. Page elements and positioning. Background colors/images. Filters and rollovers. By defining selectors for HTML elements, HTML code is minimized to only the element tags while the attributes that must display will be within the selector itself. Style sheets are governed by components called rules that affect how a web page's elements will behave according to the selectors defined. On your screen are examples of CSS semantics. Remember the CSS rule code block for a selector derived from the previous topic. Try to figure out the components of the rule statement. CSS rule components. Number 1 Selectors. Values identify an HTML element or group of elements. Number 2 Properties. Values are defined so they can be applied to the selectors. Number 3 Values. Values are given to properties to define how the properties will affect the selectors. A selector's properties and values comprise the declaration of the selector's attributes. A rule is basically the selector for the HTML element with its declarations. CSS provides a variety of properties that can be used to alter different elements in HTML, according to how they wish to design the web page, and there are also properties specific to how text behaves outside of their respective font properties. When you need to emphasize a word or phrase in a paragraph of passage in an HTML document, the common thing that you can do is write the text in boldface / italics / underlined. And when you wish to move a section of a paragraph in a lower baseline than your actual content without putting the text in subscript or superscript, you place a line break, put the passage on that line, then place another line break to continue with the paragraph. Aside from changing the style of parts of textual content, you can catch the attention of the visitor by changing the color of the text. If the passage or section of the paragraph is set not to use changing font styles and font colors, the simplest way to emphasize text is you write the passage / section in all caps. All these aforementioned HTML-based solutions can be done in a single CSS rule using font properties. CSS Properties. Text Properties. Text Properties controls the appearance of text. Text Properties extends its functions beyond font effects. Did you know that font properties open different possibilities for website design, changing color of a text, increasing / decreasing space between characters in a text, aligning of text, decorating text, text indentation on the first line, and etc. Word spacing property. Word spacing property defines the white space between words. Word spacing property indicates additional space aside from the default. Did you know that the word spacing property can be influenced by justification from the text align property, and apart from declaring the amount of spare between words, the amount of space between letters can also be defined. Letter spacing property. Letter spacing property controls the amount of space between characters. Letter spacing property is a value of normal allows the web browser to change the space between letters to justify text. This will not happen if letter spacing attribute is explicitly set to an absolute length value. Sometimes, parts of a letter extend to the space that another letter occupies when letter spacing is defined. This process is called kerning. When the resultant space between two letters is not the same as the default space, the web browser will not use ligatures. It is possible to use negative values, though it is not advisable as text may not be readable / legible. Did you know that it is possible to use different text decorations in order to give emphasis to text? Text decoration property. Text decoration property describes decorations that are added to the text of an element. Text decoration property. If an element has no text such as the img element or an empty element such as m, this property has no effect. Text decoration property values accepted for text decoration property are none, default text appearance, underline, underline text, overline, line above characters of text, line through, strike through text, and blink, blinking text. Boldface and italics are not included for the text decoration property. It is recommended not to underline text that are not hyperlinks, as this can confuse users.